Good morning, student. Today is Tuesday. I was talking with the list. I was so happy to see so many of you yesterday. That was a ton of fun to see you and say hi to you. I really hope that you like the reading for this week. It's almost like social studies because, we're reading about history. So all in all, super cool stuff that we're reading. Yesterday we completed our building knowledge graph and we read and annotated Mount Vesuvius. Today it looks like we're just going to read and do a summary. Let's check our instructions to make sure. And what do you know? Yes, we only have 2 things to do. So we're going to read and annotate the rest of the story. And we're going to write a 4-sentence summary at the very end. So let's go to paragraph 8, which is on page 27. We will get started right away. So right before this, Pliny the Younger's uncle's Spanish friend approached him and his mother and was really sort of just shocked about how they were just sticking around, and he was urging them to, get up and leave and escape the town. And then they thought to themselves, no, we're going to wait for our uncle because, we don't want anything to happen to him, so we're going to wait for him to come here. And they wait and wait. Their uncle never shows up. So then the mom's like, Pliny the Younger, you need to get going. And if I go with you, I'm too old, so I'll die. And Pliny the Younger is like, no, Mom, I'm not going to leave without you. You need to come with me. And so they make this journey out of their house and through the crowds, and that's where we are now. The ashes now began to fall upon us, though at first not in great quantity. So he's saying at first when the ashes fell, there wasn't a lot. It was just, just a little bit. I looked back. A dense, dark mist seemed to be following us. It spread itself over the country like a cloud. So think of like black smoke and black, fog, this darkness that is, when you look back behind you, it's sort of just looming and growing closer and closer and closer, and then it just spreads out over everyone. Let us go up the high road, I said, while we can still see. I fear that we shall fall in the road where we will be pressed to death in the dark by the crowds that are following us. So here they are. This is so scary. So imagine that here's Pliny, and here's his mom, and then here's like a bunch of crowds of people that are following them, that are walking. This people are so terrified that they are just running at full speed. So he's saying if they fell on the ground, then this crowd would just trample them to death. That actually happens to people. And that when there's a large crowd of people, if you fall or if you trip, people don't stop to help you up. They just walk over you because they're so scared. That's terrifying. So he's saying, let's go up this road here. There's like a road rather than going here. So everybody's going here. Let's take this road. And then, if we fell, nobody would go over us. And, we could still see at this point. That's a pretty smart move. If I was traveling through this terrifying event, I would choose Pliny as my partner because he's very smart. We had scarcely sat down when night came upon us. It was not like when the sky is cloudy or when there is no moon, but it was like a room when it is shut and all the lights put out. So it was total darkness. We heard the shrieks of women, the screams of children, and the shouts of men. Some were calling for their children, others for their parents, and others for their husbands and wives. They were trying to recognize each other by the voices that replied. One was crying about his own fate, and another that of his family. Some were wishing to die from the very fear of dying. Some were lifting their hands to the gods. So remember, so how would you feel in this situation? What would be your reaction? Okay, remember, don't write the question, write the answer. What would be your reaction if you escaped, but you were just in total darkness, there was nothing around you, and you just heard the crying and the wailing of other people? How would you feel? Okay, I'm going to turn the page, so make sure you pause and then play when you're ready. Okay. Some were lifting their hands to the gods. There were many who were convinced that there were now no gods at all. They believed that the final endless night, the end of the world, had come upon us. So this is very interesting. So remember, they believe in their sort of Roman gods. So they have multiple gods. They have the gods of Jupiter, and I don't really know all the names of the Roman gods, if I'm being honest. But they have several powerful gods. And so now, because of this event, they don't believe, some people have just stopped believing in all of the gods, period, because they didn't, they didn't see any of the gods, acting. And I think some of them might feel that, the gods caused this on, purpose. And so there's probably a lot of reasons, or several reasons, mostly, fear, that they stopped believing. And I wanted to bring this up because this happens today when something really bad happens and, people stop believing in God. You might have, even though you're young, you might have experienced it in your own life, because, something might have happened and you kind of questioned if God cared for you. Or it might be, or it might be, you saw, somebody in your family that something terrible happened, and now they didn't believe in God either. So, what do you think? I have a lot that I'd like to say about this, because in philosophy or theology, we call this the problem of evil. And there are so many, different answers, different responses, different thoughts, different views. But ultimately, we could even think about, the coronavirus, and why would God, allow something like this to happen? And I have a lot of things that I would like to say, but I'm going to wait for our Zoom, because I want to talk to you about it, and I want to hear what you think, because that's something just very, very important that as Christians, In Sunday school, we don't really talk about this hard part of faith a lot. We kind of say, oh, Jesus loves you. Jesus died for you. And if you just believe in his name, you will be saved and you'll be able to love others. But there are some times when bad things happen and we may question God's love or God's care, or if God sees us, or if God loves us and why would he allow this? Those are very hard questions. And I'm not saying that you as a fourth grader are going to have the answers, but I would like to have a conversation about it so that when you're older, it's not something new that just comes up to you. So, we will read on. They believed that the final endless night, the end of the world, had come upon us. Among these people, there were some who magnified the real dangers with fictitious horrors. I remember some, so they're saying that they made the problem bigger by telling very scary lies. I remember some who declared that one part of the Misenum had fallen and that another was on fire. I wonder what the Misenum is. He mentioned that before, but I'll have to look that up. What is this? The stories were false, but some people believed them. And in truth, it was. However, the fire fell at a distance from us. Then again, we were immersed in thick darkness. A heavy shower of ashes rained upon us. From time to time, we had to stand up to shake off the ashes or be crushed by the weight of them. That's so scary. Can you imagine just sitting and ashes just covering you? They must have been hot. They would not have been cool ashes. That'd be very frightening. We would have been buried in a heap. I might boast that during all of this horror, I let out not a sigh or cry of fear. Whoa. So he's saying that while all of this happened, he didn't show or express that he was scared or fearful at all. He said, my attitude had been grounded in that sad but mighty and comforting thought that all mankind were involved in the same destruction. I believed I was dying with the whole world. So he didn't feel bad because everyone was experiencing the same thing. To them, they thought that they had never seen anything like this volcano before. And so they all thought that it was the end of the world. Now, I have two things that I want to say. One, to me, reading this is so crazy because it reminds me of the imagery that is in the book of Revelations. And I don't want to scare you. I don't want to scare you at all. But just this sort of imagery it's very interesting how they look at it and they see, okay, this surely is the end of the world. And that when the end of the world actually happens, it will look very similar to this, to what they were experiencing. However, I think an amazing thing is that it really won't be. I always think it's funny when people say, oh, it's, the end of the world, because when the end of the world actually comes, it won't really be the end of the world. It will be sort of the ushering in of the new world, of the new heaven and of the new earth. And so I think it's terrifying that, to be in this horrible situation. But I also think it's very interesting because this, the fire and the darkness and all of that is very similar to, what the book of Revelation tells us. So, very interesting. And two, I also think that's very interesting is because this is very similar to what we're experiencing now with the coronavirus. There is this verse in 1 Peter where in 1 Peter chapter 5, I'll write that down if you want to look it up. Towards the very end of the book where he says that, he basically says to be comforted because your brothers and sisters all over the world are experiencing the same sufferings that you are. And after you have suffered a little while, God will restore, strengthen, and support you. And so I think it's very interesting how to him it's comforting because he thinks that everyone all over the world is experiencing the same thing. So for us, we are all experiencing some sort of hardship, whether it's losing a loved one, losing jobs, not being able to go to school or see our friends. Some of our family members, might be sick and not being able to see them. Some of us might, be hungrier than we usually are. And we're all, our parents are all going through the same thing of trying to, work and support the family and be a parent and also be a teacher, be a PE coach and be a music teacher, all of these things. But it is rather comforting because we know that we're all experiencing the same thing. And I think that because we're all experiencing the same thing, we should look for ways to support one another and to care for one another and to reach out for one another. A lot of people right now are feeling very lonely because they don't have a lot of people to talk to. And so, we should be reaching out to those people and finding ways to speak to those people. So I thought, wow, how amazing is it that this is exactly what we're experiencing today in this time? Okay, so lastly, paragraph 12. Let's finish this up. At last, the dreadful darkness was scattered bit by bit, like a cloud or smoke. The real day returned. Even the sun shone out, though with a pale light, like when an eclipse is coming on. Every object that presented itself to our weakened eyes seemed changed. Everything was covered deep with ashes as if by snow. We returned to Misenum, where we cleaned up as well as we could. We endured an anxious night between hope and fear, with which much larger share of the latter. For the earthquake continued. Oh my goodness, why? I would leave, just pack my stuff and leave. The earthquake continued. While many crazed people ran up and down, increasing everyone's agony with their terrible predictions. Even though we saw the danger, my mother and I had no thoughts of leaving this place until we received the news of my uncle. Farewell, Pliny the Younger. Okay, so what do you think about their great care for their uncle? Most people would have just walked on and moved on by now, but they wanted to stay until they made sure that their uncle is safe. So what do you think about Pliny's character? Okay. So list about 3 traits there on how you would describe him. And then before I get onto the summary, I want to read this part. Pliny the Elder, the uncle, died during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Pliny the Younger and his mother, Paulina Marcella, escaped with their lives. Several years afterwards, he wrote letters to the Roman senator and historian Cornelius Tacitus about the eruption. These letters were discovered and made public in the 16th century. Okay, guys, Cornelius Tacitus. On Thursday, I'm going to explain to you why this is so cool. Because Pliny the Younger is actually somebody very famous when it comes to history about Rome. And Cornelius Tacitus is also somebody that is incredibly famous. And so I think it's so cool that we're reading a letter that was actually written to him. And we'll talk about that on our Zoom because I have a letter that Cornelius Tacitus wrote that I would like to read to you. So today we're going to do a summary. So think about who is writing. And who is he writing to? What event does he describe? How does he describe it? Okay. And what happens in the end? So, excuse me. These are just to get your brain kind of going here. And if you answer these questions, this will be a pretty good summary. Okay? So, I really liked reading with you. I hope to see you on Thursday because we're going to talk about a lot of good topics today, or on Thursday. So, be sure to be there. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And we will also be going over, so on Thursday, let's see. We have like lesson 11. And lesson 12. So we'll be going over these things too. So make sure you tune in so you can get some help on your work and practice, be able to work with partners and make it feel somewhat like school again. So I miss you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.